The fallout from Theo's shocking death has sent ripples through Coronation Street, and now, in the midst of grief, suspicion, and emotional reckoning, a major star has finally spoken out about what lies ahead for Todd Grimshaw, offering a revealing glimpse into a future that is anything but simple. For weeks, viewers have watched Todd become entangled in a complicated, emotionally charged relationship with Theo, a man whose secrets ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. What began as a tentative connection quickly spiraled into something far more intense, marked by passion, confusion, and an undercurrent of danger that ultimately led to tragedy. Theo's death, sudden and surrounded by unanswered questions, has left Todd at the center of a storm, with many wondering whether he will be able to move forward or if this devastating chapter will define him permanently. According to the actor behind Todd, the character is now entering one of the most transformative periods of his life, a phase that will challenge not only his emotional resilience, but also his sense of identity and purpose. Rather than offering Todd an easy escape or a neatly resolved storyline, the show is set to delve deeply into the psychological and emotional consequences of everything he has endured, ensuring that Theo's presence continues to loom large even after his passing. In the immediate aftermath, Todd is consumed by a mix of grief and guilt, replaying every moment of his relationship with Theo and questioning whether he missed signs that could have changed the outcome. This introspection is not portrayed as a brief moment of sadness, but as a prolonged and deeply affecting journey, one that forces Todd to confront uncomfortable truths about himself, his choices, and the patterns that have shaped his relationships over the years. The star explains that Todd's tendency to be drawn toward complicated, sometimes dangerous situations will come under scrutiny, both from those around him and from within, as he begins to ask whether he is partly responsible for the chaos that seems to follow him. Friends and family, while sympathetic, are not blind to the turmoil, and their attempts to support Todd are complicated by their own suspicions and fears, creating a tense atmosphere in which trust becomes a fragile commodity. As the community grapples with Theo's death, whispers and accusations begin to circulate, and Todd finds himself under increasing pressure to explain his role in the events leading up to the tragedy. This external scrutiny adds another layer of difficulty to his grieving process, as he must navigate not only his own emotions, but also the judgment of others who may not fully understand what he went through. The actor hints that this period will see Todd pushed to his limits, with moments of isolation and vulnerability that reveal a side of him rarely seen before. However, rather than breaking him completely, these experiences are intended to serve as a catalyst for growth, prompting Todd to reevaluate his priorities and consider what he truly wants from life moving forward. One of the most intriguing aspects of Todd's future is the possibility of redemption, not in the sense of a dramatic, single act that absolves him of all wrongdoing, but through a gradual process of self-improvement and healing. The star emphasizes that the writers are committed to portraying this journey with authenticity, avoiding cliches in favor of a more nuanced exploration of how people cope with loss and rebuild their lives. This means that Todd's path will be marked by setbacks as well as progress, with moments where he appears to be moving forward only to be pulled back by lingering doubts and unresolved emotions. The memory of Theo, far from fading into the background, will continue to influence Todd's decisions, serving as both a reminder of what he has lost and a warning about the dangers of ignoring red flags. At the same time, there is an acknowledgement that life must go on and that Todd cannot remain trapped in the past indefinitely. New opportunities and relationships are likely to emerge, but they will be shaped by the lessons he has learned, making them fundamentally different from what came before. The actor teases that viewers can expect to see Todd approach future connections with greater caution and self-awareness, though this does not necessarily mean he will avoid drama altogether. In fact, the complexity that defines Todd as a character is unlikely to disappear, ensuring that his story remains compelling and unpredictable. Another key element of Todd's future involves his role within the wider community, as he seeks to rebuild trust and find his place in a world that now feels very different. This may involve making amends with those he has hurt, as well as standing up for himself in situations where he feels misunderstood or unfairly judged. The balance between accountability and self-preservation will be a recurring theme, highlighting the challenges of navigating relationships in the wake of trauma. The star suggests that Todd's journey will resonate with viewers who have experienced loss or struggled to move on from difficult situations, offering a portrayal that is both relatable and thought-provoking. Importantly, the show is not positioning Todd as a victim or a villain, but as a multifaceted individual whose actions and experiences reflect the complexities of real life. This approach allows for a richer, more engaging narrative, one that encourages audiences to empathize with Todd even as they question some of his choices. As the storyline unfolds, there will likely be moments of tension and conflict, particularly as new information about Theo's life and death comes to light. These revelations have the potential to reshape Todd's understanding of what happened, either alleviating some of his guilt or intensifying it, depending on what is uncovered. The uncertainty surrounding these developments adds an element of suspense. As the dust slowly begins to settle after Theo's devastating death, the emotional aftershocks continue to ripple through Coronation Street, and Todd Grimshaw finds himself standing at a crossroads that could ultimately redefine who he is. The confirmation from the actor behind Todd doesn't just reassure fans that the character will remain central to the drama. It makes it clear that what lies ahead is a deeply layered, emotionally complex evolution that refuses to take the easy route. In fact, rather than allowing Todd to simply grieve and move on, the show is leaning into the consequences of everything that has happened, exploring how trauma, love, guilt, and self-reflection collide in ways that feel both raw and uncomfortably real. Theo's death is not being treated as an isolated plot twist, but as a turning point that exposes long-standing vulnerabilities within Todd, forcing him to confront patterns in his life that he has previously ignored or buried. There is a sense that, for perhaps the first time in a long while, Todd cannot charm, manipulate, or deflect his way out of the emotional corner he finds himself in, and that reality alone sets the stage for a gripping and unpredictable journey. What makes this storyline particularly compelling is the way it intertwines Todd's personal grief with the wider social dynamics of the street, creating an environment where every interaction carries weight and meaning. People who once stood firmly in Todd's corner may begin to question him, not necessarily out of malice, but because the circumstances surrounding Theo's death are too significant to ignore. This creates a subtle but powerful shift in how Todd is perceived, transforming him from someone who often controlled the narrative into someone who is now at the mercy of it. The actor has hinted that Todd will struggle with this loss of control, especially as rumors, half-truths, and speculation begin to circulate, each one chipping away at his already fragile state of mind. It's not just about whether Todd is directly blamed for what happened. It's about how he internalizes the possibility that he could have done something differently, that perhaps there were moments where he chose not to see the truth because it was inconvenient or uncomfortable. This internal conflict becomes one of the driving forces behind Todd's storyline moving forward, as he begins to replay key moments in his relationship with Theo, searching for answers that may never fully come. The writing leans heavily into this psychological aspect, showing how grief is rarely linear and how guilt can manifest in ways that are both subtle and overwhelming. Todd might find himself withdrawing from those who care about him, not because he doesn't value their support, but because he feels unworthy of it or fears that they see him differently now. At the same time, there may be bursts of defensiveness or frustration, moments where Todd pushes back against the narrative forming around him, insisting that things are not as simple as they appear. This push-and-pull dynamic adds depth to his character, ensuring that he remains unpredictable and emotionally engaging. Interestingly, the actor has suggested that Theo's influence on Todd will not end with his death. In fact, it may become even more pronounced. Memories, flashbacks, and lingering questions will continue to shape Todd's decisions, almost as if Theo's presence is still woven into his everyday life. This narrative choice allows the show to explore the idea that relationships don't simply disappear when someone is gone. Instead, they evolve into something more intangible but no less impactful. For Todd, this means carrying both the good and the bad aspects of what he shared with Theo, learning to reconcile the love he felt with the darker elements that ultimately led to tragedy. It's a delicate balance, one that requires careful storytelling to avoid tipping too far into sentimentality or melodrama, but when done well, it has the potential to create some of the most powerful scenes the show has delivered in recent memory. At the same time, there is a growing sense that Todd's future will involve a gradual rebuilding process, one that touches every aspect of his life. Relationships that were strained or neglected during his involvement with Theo may come back into focus, offering opportunities for reconciliation as well as conflict. Some characters may be willing to give Todd the benefit of the doubt, recognizing that he is struggling and needs support, while others may be less forgiving, holding him accountable in ways that force him to confront uncomfortable truths. This dynamic ensures that Todd's journey is not isolated but deeply connected to the fabric of the street, reinforcing the idea that actions have consequences that extend beyond the individual. Another intriguing element teased by the actor is the possibility that Todd will begin to question what he truly wants from life, beyond the drama and intensity that have often defined his relationships. Theo's death acts as a wake-up call, highlighting the risks of being drawn to complicated situations without fully considering the potential fallout. This doesn't mean that Todd will suddenly become a completely different person. His sharp wit, emotional complexity, and occasional impulsiveness are all integral to who he is, but there may be a shift in how he approaches future decisions. He might become more cautious, more reflective, perhaps even more guarded, though whether this leads to healthier choices or simply different kinds of mistakes remains to be seen. The idea of redemption also looms large over Todd's future, though it is portrayed in a nuanced and realistic way rather than as a straightforward arc. Redemption, in this context, is not about a single grand gesture that erases the past, but about a series of small, meaningful steps that demonstrate growth and self-awareness. This could involve taking responsibility for his actions, making amends where possible, and learning to forgive himself for things he cannot change. However, the show is careful not to present this as an easy or guaranteed outcome. There will be setbacks, moments where Todd falls back into old patterns or struggles to maintain the progress he has made, reflecting the reality that personal growth is rarely a smooth or a linear process. The confirmation from the Coronation Street star about Todd Grimshaw's future after Theo's death has done more than just reassure fans that the character is staying on screen. It has effectively signaled the beginning of a much darker, more emotionally complex era for him. What's becoming increasingly clear is that Todd is not being written out of this tragedy as a passive victim or a simple mourner. Instead, he is being positioned at the center of a long-running fallout story that will test his relationships, his morals, and his sense of identity in ways the character has never experienced before. The actor's comments suggest that the writers are deliberately resisting any temptation to reset Todd after Theo's death. There is no clean slate, no emotional eraser, just consequences that continue to unfold in unexpected directions. In the immediate aftermath, Todd's world narrows dramatically. His focus shifts inward, becoming almost obsessive at times as he tries to reconstruct the timeline of his relationship with Theo. Every conversation, every argument, every moment of affection is replayed through a new lens, as though hidden meaning might suddenly reveal itself if he looks closely enough. This kind of retrospective analysis becomes emotionally exhausting, blurring the line between genuine memory and distorted interpretation. The actor hints that Todd begins to question not only Theo's actions, but his own judgment, wondering whether his involvement clouded his ability to see warning signs that others might have picked up on immediately. That self-doubt becomes one of the most persistent emotional threads running through his story. But the impact is not confined to Todd alone. The wider community reaction plays a crucial role in shaping his journey, because grief in a place like Weatherfield is never private for long. People talk, speculate, and interpret events through their own biases, and Todd finds himself increasingly defined by narratives that are not entirely under his control. Some residents may see him as another victim of Theo's hidden life, while others may quietly suspect that there is more to the story than has been revealed. This ambiguity places Todd in an uncomfortable position where he is neither fully trusted nor fully condemned, but instead exists in a gray area that is emotionally draining to navigate. As tensions rise, Todd's relationships begin to fracture in subtle but meaningful ways. Friends who once offered unconditional support start to ask more difficult questions, not necessarily out of suspicion, but out of a need to understand something that feels unresolved. Those conversations are not aggressive, but they are emotionally loaded, and Todd struggles with how much he should reveal. This creates a sense of isolation even when he is surrounded by people, as though he is constantly holding back a version of events that he is not yet ready or willing to fully articulate. The actor describes this as one of the most challenging phases for Todd because it forces him to sit with discomfort rather than escape it through distraction or deflection. What makes this storyline particularly significant is the suggestion that Theo's death is not the end of a narrative, but the beginning of a psychological unraveling that will stretch far beyond the immediate aftermath. In many ways, Theo becomes a permanent presence in Todd's life, not physically, but emotionally and symbolically. His absence shapes every decision Todd makes, turning him into a reference point for regret, reflection, and unresolved emotion. Even moments of apparent progress are shadowed by the question of what Theo would have thought, or how things might have unfolded differently under other circumstances. This lingering presence ensures that the storyline retains emotional continuity, even as new plots emerge. At the same time, there are clear indications that the writers are intent on pushing Todd towards some form of transformation, even if it is gradual and uneven. The actor suggests that Todd will eventually be forced to confront a pattern in his life that he has previously avoided acknowledging, a tendency to become emotionally entangled in situations that are intense, unstable, or ultimately damaging. This is not framed as blame, but as recognition. For Todd, the challenge lies in understanding why he is drawn to these dynamics and whether he can break that cycle without losing the parts of himself that make him emotionally open and connected to others. That internal conflict becomes especially important as new potential relationships or friendships begin to emerge in the aftermath of Theo's death. However, nothing is straightforward. Any attempt at moving forward is complicated by emotional residue from the past. Todd may find himself comparing new connections to what he experienced with Theo, even subconsciously, measuring them against a standard that is both idealized and painful. This creates tension between desire and caution, between the need to move on and the fear of repeating history. The actor teases that these contradictions will be central to Todd's evolution, making his future decisions unpredictable and emotionally charged. Another key element of Todd's future involves accountability, not in a punitive sense, but in terms of emotional honesty. There is an implication that he will eventually need to face uncomfortable truths about how he handled aspects of his relationship with Theo, including moments where avoidance or denial may have played a role. This does not position Todd as responsible for Theo's death, but it does explore the idea that relationships are complex systems where multiple emotional factors interact in ways that are not always visible at the time. The storyline appears to be interested in exploring those gray areas rather than offering simple explanations. The emotional weight of all this is compounded by Todd's own coping mechanisms, which begin to shift under pressure. At times he may withdraw completely, isolating himself in an attempt to process everything alone. At other moments, he may swing in the opposite direction, seeking distraction through social interaction or work, trying to regain a sense of normality. Neither approach provides lasting relief, and this instability reflects the broader theme of grief as something that resists structure or control. The actor's comments suggest that this unpredictability is intentional, designed to keep both Todd and the audience off balance.